to see Bill off.
Birkett here, along with Carlos Monarrez and Shawn Windsor, Freak.com. The Lions minicamp is in the books, guys. We're headed towards summer, and look, usually we're here to talk a little Lions, but Carlos, we brought you here for different reasons today. It's a little bit of an intervention. We're worried about you. Truthfully, you've been a little too optimistic for anyone's liking here of late. 2 positive columns this week about the Lions, about Dan Campbell and the direction of the program, relatively positive at least. And I don't know, I'm concerned. As a friend, I'm worried about your health. Are you okay? Is there anything that you need to tell us right now? Blink twice if you need help.
Yeah, no, Shawn, put that seatbelt back on, because it's going to be a bumpy ride, all right? No, I give them, I mean, it's a, you can call it positive, you can call it negative. I call it realistic. This is a team that's building, and I say, let's give them 2 years. Let's give them 2 years to see what's going on. We got guys in place, like I said in the column today, Quora, Trey Flowers, they're playing out of position. So that's going to take some getting used to. They don't have their personnel. I mean, that happens with every team, right? They got to get their guys in who fit their scheme, their vision, whatever. That's going to take a little while to sort out. It's probably going to take another draft class and then the development of that draft class. So we're a ways away. But you see the beginnings of it. You see what they're trying to do. Fortify the offensive line, change to the 3-4 scheme, maybe get a little tougher, get their linebackers to play faster. I think Jelani Tavai's got to lose probably another 40 pounds. I don't know how much they want him to lose, but so it's slowly taking shape. They're not going to make the playoffs, obviously, but we just want to see a little progress. And I think we kind of seen the beginnings of that in minicamp and in the off season.
Shawn, I know you weren't out there this week at minicamp. You had some other things going on. So look, if Jelani Tavai lost another 40 pounds, he'd look like me, right? I mean, that's how skinny he'd be. But no, I don't know. Are you buying some of this optimism too? I agree, Carlos. I think you said it right? We are at the very beginning stages of whatever this Lions program is going to be. And there's no telling, frankly. I mean, I think everyone, acknowledges that, right? Like, there's some good that they've done so far, but the one thing that you didn't mention, Carlos, too, is they need a quarterback, right? Or they need to solve that quarterback spot, whether it's Goff or someone else. But I'm optimistic. I think at least the arrow is pointed in the right direction, which we haven't always been able to say about Lions regimes. Shawn, I want you to weigh in on that too.
Well, I can just confess to some confusion here on a few levels. First of all, if I remember correctly, and it's been a few years now, but I think what's confusing me the most probably is that when Patricia took over, Carlos wasn't optimistic at all. He was complaining about them running too much and so forth. And then said right away, I don't think he used the phrase in over his head, but that was sort of the implication. And then eventually flipped on that. So that's a little confusing that he's not taking the same tack. To your point about his last 2 columns being optimistic, he did point out a mistake in the first one. But the second one, he pointed out a mistake, but that's okay. He's owning up to it. He's not trying to hide it. And that's a good sign. So that was confusing. The idea that somebody can be a human being, and he acknowledged that. I don't think I've ever seen him do that. And that was, so I mean, I don't even know what planet I'm on right now, to be honest with you.
The white coats are coming for you, Carlos. They are coming.
Yeah. And the other thing too, just as an aside, is I'm still waiting for him to start a column without I. But it's I, and then it's positive thoughts. So that's a good step, an appropriate step, So as far as the Lions, I'm with Carlos, although I might quibble a touch with the idea of the lack of talent, because if you have a running back who shows a lot of promise, a Pro Bowl level tight end, and potentially one of the best offensive lines in the league, and a serviceable quarterback, you might not be terrible, right? I mean, at least that's some talent, right, Carlos? Or what do you think?
No, I mean, what I'm talking about is elite star talent, like guys who, everybody knows outside of Detroit, and they don't have a lot of those guys. And it's also kind of an indictment, and I mentioned this, that everybody's like, Todd Gurley's a savior. When Todd Gurley's your savior, you're in bad shape here. You know, you're hoping for some.
Time out. Who has said Todd Gurley is going to be the savior?
No one. That's
Everybody.
Like that's the maybe number 3 running back.
He almost made me cuss. I was going to say that's an effing straw man argument. That's a straw man argument.
I'll tell you who said Todd Gurley is the savior. All the people who are clicking on your stories about Todd Gurley is visiting and more Todd Gurley, and people are so excited about it. You know, I mean, they just don't. Listen, this is a rebuilding team. They shouldn't have stars. This is why they don't have Kenny Golladay on their team. You know, it's just natural. And Dave, I know you put out a call for a mailbag this weekend today, and you know, take Twitter with a grain of salt. You know, but people are like, oh, if we just sign a free agent out there, what if we get some guy off the, who hasn't been signed yet? And could that be enough to get us over the edge? Could we talk about play out? People are, and this is the great marketing genius of the NFL, is every fan base of 32 teams, and there's probably only like 6 of them who legitimately have a chance to win the Super Bowl, but the other 20 some think they have a chance if the rookie just does great this year, if they just sign this one defensive end, we can make a run. What if Aaron Rodgers gets into a slap fight with Matt LaFleur? Is this the Lions' year, Dave? Is there a chance? No, there's no chance.
Dave. I wish I was in person with Carlos. I could do this to him like Marty McFly got in the Back to the Future. Although I hate to do myself like that. Hello, Carlos. Hello, Biff. Hello, Carlos. Are you there? What do you mean marketing genius? Dude, that's based on facts and reality and a long track record of almost every year, at least a couple of teams making the playoffs. We had no idea was coming. I am by no means saying that's the Lions, but I'm saying don't just poo-poo that, bud, because that's based on what happens every year in the NFL. And it's the only league like it.
I think that's right. I think when you talk about, there's a half dozen teams that have a shot, we're talking the NBA, right? We're talking, maybe Major League Baseball. That's not the NFL. There's more than that. But Carlos, look, I don't know what bots are clogging up your Twitter feed. The Lions fans on mine seem pretty accepting of where this organization is right now. Yes, some of them do look at what's going on in Green Bay and, hey, Aaron Rodgers, if he's out, maybe that gives us hope. And there's a little more optimism seeing this thing in place than there was, 3 months ago. But I don't think anyone is pointing to the Lions and saying they're going to surprise and win the NFC North right now. Most people are saying we might win 6 games. I mean, that's sort of the feedback that I'm getting, right? Like, I think people are realistic with the Lions. I think that goes for Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes too. And I give them credit for that. I mean, Dan told me way back January, I guess it was January, February, whenever that, they want to win, right? I mean, he's a competitive guy. He's talked about that a ton. I think everyone sees that, right? If you're in sports, you're probably a pretty competitive guy, but they're also realistic about where they're at right now. And that is exactly like all 3 of us agree, in the very beginning stages of a rebuild. And maybe they have a quarterback, maybe they don't. They certainly look like they have the makings of a good offensive line. Shawn, you mentioned Hawkinson earlier. I think, he's going to have a really big year. He's a good player. So they have some pieces. They don't have that super blue chip star, Carlos. I don't know that it has to be a big household name, but I don't know that they have that super blue chip star on their roster yet. But that's all right. If they build this thing incrementally, maybe they can get to where they want to be.
I hope that people understand that. I mean, like I said, take Twitter, with a grain of salt, and people get excited and they just, this is on your Twitter feed, by the way, people, when you're asking for mailbag stuff, and people want to know, is there a chance for some hope? Because obviously every other team is rebuilding and there's very little chance for a while. So I understand that, but I hope that people, like in golf, they talk about, you're a big golfer, Dave, I know. And
huge.
When you go practice golf, I know your golf instructor tells you, don't be ball bound, which means don't care about what the ball does. Make sure your mechanics are right. And that's what the Lions need to be worried about right now, is making sure they're building the foundation, doing the right things. They don't have to worry about wins and losses right now. Like you said, they want to win. Sure, everybody wants to win. But do the right things, stick to your plan, whatever it is, that 3-4, probably 3-4 is going to be terrible this year. That we've seen a bad defense for the last few years. It's probably going to be bad again this year. They don't have exactly the right pieces to fit it. So it's going to take some patience. So as much as we want to hope that Dan Campbell is a savior and Brad Holmes is a savior, and this is all going to be new, the record at the end of the year is going to look a lot like the Patricia Bob Quinn record. So let's just be patient and see what happens. And maybe little things, right? Maybe Goff is the guy, maybe somebody steps up. Maybe Jamal Williams is amazing. Maybe, maybe Swift gets 10 touchdowns combined,
Yeah.
That.
I think not all 6-win seasons are equal. I think we can all agree on that. But Shawn, Carlos is putting this in golf terms, which is foreign to me. So talk some basketball. I put this in basketball terms that I can understand, I guess, right?
Well, I'm trying to figure out what sport he thinks he's watching, but can we get back to a deeper philosophical, no, that's the wrong word, an existential question here. Carlos, what happened to you in the last week or two that you would actually write a column and say, okay, this guy made a mistake, but I really like the way he talked about his mistake, and I'm going to praise him for it. So where did that come from? What has happened to you in your life the last couple of weeks that we're reading that now?
Might think he's a Patricia relative or something. Go ahead, Carlos. Let's hear it.
I think he is a cousin. He's a long lost cousin. No, I've said this before, and unfortunately, the readers and more simple-minded sports writers sometimes they apply their own bias to what it says more. When you think I'm negative or I'm positive, it says more about you than it does me. I write fair, even-handed, across the board columns all the time, and whether you take them as negative or positive depends on your outlook. So that means
you're making me cough.
it's a little too much truth sometimes for guys. So I understand that, but you'll see,
you didn't find a Buddhist temple, Carlos? You didn't start doing goat yoga? You didn't, are you smoking weed? I'd like to know, are you taking gummy bear edibles? I mean, what is going on?
I did not cover the Alvin Johnson weed press conference. So I'm clear. I'm willing to take a test right now. I have a sample ready to go. So just stop over, Shawn. I'll give it to you. Okay.
Okay. I just was curious where this new equanimity came from. It's
equanimity of St. Brown leading us to a Lions receiver. No, look, I mean, bottom line, right? You can't tell much from minicamp. And so all this optimism is not necessarily founded in what we saw on the field. I mean, yeah, it's good to see the guys run around, but there's no pads. There's nothing going on there. I think it's all about just the process, right? I mean, I hate to say, put it in my basketball terms, but trust the process, or baseball or whatever, right? But that's, I mean, look, that's really, Carlos, because you say, you don't want Lions fans to get crazy. When they start losing games and they have a really tough schedule to start, it's inevitable that people are going to look at this and say, what's going on? There's some mistake on the field, some game management thing. There is something that is going to lead people to, flee or give up on the season, or maybe even the regime. And I'm with you. I think this is something that, these guys need a little bit of time. You don't need 5 years, but you need some time to start getting this thing right. And as I've said, several times with you guys and in print, I think the NFC North is about to swing wide open, depending on what happens with Aaron Rodgers. Maybe not this year, but in the very near future. And it's whatever team gets the quarterback situation right, gets their rebuild right, their building process right, because the Bears are in that process too, in a lot of ways. And the Vikings, they need to get a quarterback. And the Packers already have a young guy. But whatever team gets that right is going to be the team that controls this division for the next decade.
Go ahead, Carlos.
I think Dave said this when Favre was at the end of his line too, is the door's wide open. Once Brett Favre's gone, it's the Lions' chance. And here come, I don't know who would have been
saying it since the Don Majkowski days. Yeah.
Dan Orlovsky's the savior for this franchise, and you watch. I don't know. I mean, who knows? We don't know what Justin Fields is going to be. There's an opportunity, sure. But I think that your point about, there's going to be a lot of mistakes, and there will be, situational mistakes from the coaching staff, time management. We're going to see a lot of bad football, from the coaches, from the players, and that's part of it. That's going to be no matter how experienced of a coach you are, I mean, Caldwell made mistakes, and he'd been a head coach before, and he was pretty smart. And I hope that Dan Campbell, the way he owned this mistake about, failing to schedule joint practices, I hope he continues that. And, is open and honest about it. I think, Dave, that's one of the things you've liked about Campbell. Absolutely. Is he doesn't try to obscure what you can see. It's obvious when there's mistakes or whatever. He's been pretty forthright about, simple things like what they're going to do in practice, scheduling things in practice and little things like that are helpful. So, if he continues that, and it'll be hard because once you start losing, everybody feels the frustration and the walls closing in. And if he can stave that off and keep that mindset for the next year or two, and I hope people like Shawn aren't too, hard on him in the future of, come on, man, what are we doing? And we gotta, throwing weird, highfalutin words like existentialism at him, and keep it simple. He's a Texas boy, just like you, Shawn. So, where he's coming from. But I hope he keeps that same outlook of this is a process not only for the players, but for the coaching staff and him as well.
Well, Carlos, I think to your point, because you wrote about it, I'll give you that in floor one section. I just, about the not scheduling the joint practices. You're right? He would have liked to have them. The Lions would have liked to have them. They would have benefited from them. It's not going to, crush your season, right? That's not going to be the reason why they lose 10 games or whatever it is. But he admitted the mistake. And I think that organizationally, the Lions realized when they hired Dan Campbell, a first-time head coach, essentially, and they hired Brad Holmes, a first-time GM, I think they realized that there were going to be some of those growing pains on that coaching side too, but they believe that these are the right people to lead them. And if the right people can then go ahead and get the other right people, the people on the field, the people that matter in the game of football, that's when you see if they can make their mistakes now. Well, this team is not expected to do much and built to not do much. Then maybe they learn from those when the time is ready for them to compete.
I have a thought and then a question I'd like to put to both of you guys, because it's been a pretty big topic, I guess, the last month, a couple of months really, but especially through minicamp, and Carlos even wrote about it to some degree. But my thought real quick first is just get back to the quarterback idea. To me, it seems like if they hit on enough picks and a few smart signings with some of the pieces they have, thinking about the New Orleans model for a little bit. And I know Drew Brees was an all-timer, but he did not play like an all-timer the last couple of seasons, and they were still really, really good. So to me, it seems like it's possible that they could be sort of building that a little bit in LA, a little bit in New Orleans, and some other stuff, and putting enough good, solid pieces around them that they'll just need solid quarterback play to be, a playoff type team in a couple of years, whether that's Goff or somebody else. Obviously, you want to hit a home run with the quarterback, but plenty of teams don't, and are still respectable teams. And it seems to me that they're laying the foundation for that possibility. Whether it happens or not, I don't know. But then the question I have for both of you is, and I kind of know Carlos's answer a little bit, but let's get into this a little bit deeper. This idea of culture and vibe and positivity, and does that matter? And, Tracy Walker talking last week about being able to be himself, which means you don't have to think, which means you can get to point A to point B a lot more quickly, all of that kind of stuff. How does that translate for y'all in terms of what kind of difference it could make?
I think it, I think it can, but only to a certain extent, right? Like it can get people to listen and get people to buy in, and, at the very early stages like we're in now, but ultimately it's just about wins, and the wins is about the players as much as anything. With all due respect to the great coaches out there, it's about the Jimmies and the Joes, not the X's and the O's, right? As the old saying goes.
There's a basketball phrase.
Right. So, but no, I mean, yes, I think there's a lot of optimism right now, but there was a lot of optimism at this stage when Patricia was hired too, and a lot of optimism when Jim Caldwell was hired and Jim Schwartz. And that's it's natural for the start of a new regime because it's so different than the last regime, and because there's a reason you're making a change, right? Because things didn't work out. And so you need something to latch onto and some hope. So if we're being honest, like that's a lot of the reason for the optimism right now. But, again, that gets you to from point A to point B. But to win the championship, you know, you got to get to point Z. So you got a whole lot more steps that you have to take, that just having the early stages, the beginning of the right culture, the right people in the building is not going to get you all the way there.
Yeah, I think ultimately, I was thinking about this question earlier, Shawn, and I think that ultimately, you know, whether they're football players or anybody else, what you really want in your job is a boss or, you know, company, whatever it is that puts you in the best position to succeed. You know, you don't need a best friend. You don't need a dad. You need somebody who recognizes what you do well and lets you do it well, you know. And I asked Trey Flowers this question a couple days ago, you know, how much does it help to be happy, you know, and whatever, having fun, because they've been stressing that in the practices of having fun, these fun little competitions and whatever, you know. And Flowers is not the kind of guy who needs that. I mean, this guy was, I think they created him in a football factory to go play football. And so that's all he thinks about. That's all he does. You know, he's a quiet dude. He leads by example. So he doesn't, you know, he kind of danced around it and said, you know, some guys need more structure. They need more, whatever, you know, but some guys don't. Some guys are more pros and just tell me what to do and how to do it. And as long as you feel you're being put in the right position, this is where Tracy Walker probably didn't feel he was being put in the right position the last year under or so. And Flowers is in a tough spot because I'm sure he would not opt to play outside linebacker on his own and have to go cover guys suddenly for the first time. So that's going to be for him. But he's a good soldier, and he says right now they're buying in. They're on Dan Campbell's side, but you know that these guys know it's going to be a process. You know that Campbell really is unproven. So a lot of these coaches, as much as they talk about former players and whatever, they're unproven as coaches. So that's going to take a little while, you know, of you know, transitioning from you know, being we lost Shawn. You know, from transitioning from a player to coach and getting the most out of your players and all that. So I think it, you know, what was Shawn's original question?
I don't know. I usually tune him out. I'm sure he's, you know, how sometimes his phone goes out. Like if he gets a call from his wife, that's like, do you have the car running in the garage? Like, what are you doing out there? So I don't know if I completely, he's probably somewhere in the background here waiting to pop back in, but no, he was, you know,
it's the culture, you know, he's talking about the culture. And yeah, does it help? Does it matter? Like you said, every time that there's a new coach, everybody's happy, whatever. So I don't know. I mean, it's good that they seem to like Campbell. How much that's going to translate into success, you know, and doing the right things and showing promise.
Probably matters, but hey, it can only take you so far. And we only have to look at the Jim Caldwell era to see that. They love Jim Caldwell. They couldn't get past, you know, being that sort of, you know, wild card type team, you know, and that's why they made the change. And I thought they were right to make the change, and that change didn't work out. And now they made another change, and we'll see how this change works out. All right, Carlos, last thing. I don't know if Shawn's going to join us back in here or not. Oh, maybe he is coming back in. No, he's not coming back in now. Sorry. I thought I had a little alert there. I get to sit down with Brad Holmes again next week, talk to him obviously before the draft. Look, you know, there's not much that has gone on since I talked to him last, really since everyone's talked to him. So I want to know from you, what are some of the questions that you want to ask Brad Holmes? Like, what are some of the outstanding issues that you think need to be addressed at this stage of the off season, heading into the season, where there is all this optimism, including by yourself out there, but yet there's still, everyone can admit this is still very much a work in progress.
Yeah, I mean, you're obviously trying to get me to do your job for you.
Absolutely.
The only question I have is Todd Gurley. You gotta, like, when are you going to sign Todd Gurley? Okay. No, I'd like to know from Brad of how is this, what is your vision for what this team is going to be, what the strength of this team is going to be? You know, do you guys have a plan that it has to evolve over the next 2-3 years, like depending on who you can draft, or do you have an idea of who you want to be? You want to have this, you know, whatever it is, super intense, aggressive defense, or you want to have a run first, you know, offense with a great offensive line, or you want to have an amazing quarter, what a passing game. You're going to go get some amazing outside receivers, and who do you want to be? Is there an example out there, whether it's the Rams or chart, whatever it is, what's your vision for the identity of this team 2-3 years down the line?
Shawn, do you have to go feed the parking meter? Is that why we lost you?
No, my excuse me, my iPhone overheated and shut down.
That's why it's good to do these from your home next time.
It's all, you know what? It's the fault. It's my fault from all the hot takes. I overheated his phone.
Yeah, I think that's it. No, yeah, I just realized there's no place where I'm parked. There's no good place. The sun is everywhere today, right? It's a beautiful thing, but yeah, it didn't even occur to me. I don't think that's ever happened to my phone before. So
it's a beautiful thing, and I'm gonna head to the beach in a sec, but I just want to loop you in on the last thing that Carlos and I were talking about. That I'm gonna sit down with Brad Holmes again next week, and I just want to know from your standpoint, what else is there? We're at a stage of the off season where there's not much new going on, right? We've talked about every player they've added. We've talked about the draft. I wrote about Brad back in January when they hired him. What are the topics that are still on your mind? What do you think we need to discuss as for the sake of the Lions fans out there that want to know about this team and the future of this team and where they're headed?
Well, there are a couple things, and Carlos, I think I heard saying a little bit of this, and I agree with Carlos, I'd be curious a little bit more about identity of the team and what kind of team, for sure. But the more interesting thing to me, the more immediate thing, is exactly what does he think, or what do they think they have in Jared Goff, right? I saw a story you probably saw the other day. Sean McVay, the head coach of the Los Angeles Rams, was talking about how happy he is right now during minicamp, and it was sort of related to Matthew Stafford, which is a shot at Jared Goff. And so I'm just not that you need to ask him about that per se, but just this realistic idea of what they think they have and maybe what they hope they can get. I mean, because to me, that could make the difference between 3 wins and 7 wins or whatever, right? Or 8 wins. I mean, I don't know, whatever their ceiling could be. And I'd want to know that. And then longer term, yeah, to Carl's point, what kind of team do you want beyond that, right?
I will not take either of your suggestions into account, but I appreciate them anyway. So.
No, don't give the readers what they want at all.
The readers want Carlos. They want the old Carlos back. Or maybe they don't. I don't know. Judging by the feedback. Yeah.
They want to hate read him, you mean?
I don't know. It depends. They've been doing that for so long, right? Wait a minute. We want this and Carlos wants the opposite. Hold on. The wind's blowing this way. Carlos has to go. And now Carlos is blowing the same direction as the wind. So they're like, everyone's confused by it. And it's
disorienting. Well, the problem is, Carlos's stuff's behind a paywall, so it's subscription. So when people hate read, they usually want to hate read for free. So you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. Maybe we'll convert a few more of those free readers to subscriptions, just because they'll be sort of like us. They'll look at it and they'll be like, what has gotten into Carlos? Has this guy gone mad? They want to see it. They want to see it firsthand. They want to see how it evolves. So
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. All right, we're gonna end it here. It's been a good chat, fellas. But like I said, spring is upon us. The Lions off-season program is just about done. They have a few more workouts next week, but most of the vets will be, long gone, enjoying their summer before they get to return for training camp. And as always, Carlos will be there at training camp. Shawn, if you can find the directions, I'm sure you'll be there as well at some point. Maybe
I will be
we'll see you out there one day. So
yeah, of course I'll be there. Tell us where you're going. I mean, I don't want to give you live a celebrity life, so we don't want people coming up to you, but can you tell us at least the general sort of area where you're going without the specific area?
As in
the beach. You said the beach.
Oh, did I say the beach? I'm going to take my son's got swim lessons here a little bit later this afternoon.
Oh, so I thought Dave Birkett was going to spend some money and go take a trip.
No, well, we took a little trip Memorial Day weekend. We went on a nice little road trip, hit the Hall of Fames, and
that's true. That's true.
Yeah, now we're I think the next trip will probably be bye week. That's probably, look, maybe we go away for a couple days during this little time off that I get here, but for the most part, I think we'll probably we'll save the Marriott points. Spending money that's not in my bag either. I'll spend my Marriott points and my Delta miles, but I'm not spending money. So we'll see how far those can take me.
That's smart. All
right, that'll do it for us. We appreciate you guys joining us as always. And this is probably the last one for the three of us until training camp. So we'll see you back here in July. For Carlos Monarrez, Shawn Windsor, I'm Dave Birkett, Freak.com.